Greetings and welcome to Mondays with Nicolette. Thank you for joining me for part 3 of this 4-part series on finding your focus. I'm going to be sharing some research supported information as well as practical and actionable steps that you can take to boost your productivity, be successful in accomplishing your goals, and increase your ability to focus, reducing your stress, and enhancing your overall well-being. If you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and do that now, and be sure to turn on your notifications so that you won't miss the next session. So let's start with this session. So just to do a quick recap, in the last few sessions, I talked about the importance of focus and the intersection of focus and mindfulness. And I just want to remind you that the definition of focus is the ability to direct our awareness and our effort to one task for a specified amount of time or until that task is complete. Mindfulness is being able to pay attention in the present moment to each moment. So it makes sense that if we increase our ability to be mindful, that we will also increase our ability to focus and to concentrate if mindfulness is also raising our awareness and being able to bring our awareness and direct it towards one place and one time. So that's what we're going to be continuing to talk about. So last session, I shared a couple of common focus blockers, the things that we find challenging when we are trying to focus, as well as some quick fixes for how we can address those challenges. As promised, I am going to delve a little more deeper into some of the bigger challenges that we face when we attempt to focus and to concentrate. And I'm going to also share some strategies for addressing and overcoming those as well. So I'm going to start with the easiest one, or at least what I find the easiest one. And this is one of the things that tends to limit our ability to concentrate or to focus. And that's our tasks. So what are the tasks? The things that we have to do, the places we have to go, and the people that we have to see. So many times when we are attempting to focus on getting something done or being someplace with someone, we are preoccupied with the things that we have to do, where we have to go, what are the things that are beckoning to us at any given time and place. So the way that we need to deal with those things is to write them down and get them out of the way. So today we are aided by the wonderful technology that we have at our disposal, where we can just put all of these things into some form of device. But in the absence of a device, there's always our calendar. You can have a good old-fashioned paper calendar. As you know, I publish planners and calendars, so I am a big fan of using them. There is something to be said for writing down what you have to do in your own hand and putting it someplace that you can actually just take with you and whip out, regardless of Wi-Fi connection or any of those other technicalities that we may be blocked by when we need to know, what do I have to do? Where do I have to be? So calendars and planners are great to use for noting our tasks. We can also set up reminders so that we don't forget to do those things and we're not pressured with having to remember to do them. Because once we keep them in our brain, we are also limiting the space that we have available to be present at any given time, because we're storing information that is best stored elsewhere. So one of the ways to help ourselves to focus is to put our tasks wherever they really need to be, which is not in our head. They need to be done. We need to be there. We need to, schedule certain things and attend certain things. But those are not things that we need to keep in our mind. When we free up our minds from our tasks, we can enable ourselves to better focus on what is in front of us at any given time. The next challenge that we face when trying to focus is called self-talk. So self-talk is self-explanatory. It's just like what it sounds like. It is our own self-talk, or the voices that we hear in our head. Now, the thing about self-talk is that if you notice, you can hear the voice in your head, but we can still step away from the voice in our head and recognize that that voice is not really our core. It's not really who we are. It's just a voice that tends to replay in our mind when we are conscious of it or not conscious of it. Part of our mindfulness practice is to become more mindful of that voice in our head, because typically that voice tends to play dual roles. The voice can be a cheerleader. It can congratulate us for things done well. It can encourage us to move ahead towards our goals and to motivate ourselves. However, for most people, that voice tends to be our biggest critic, and we hear it a lot, and it tells us certain things, and the things that it tells us are often many limiting beliefs. It will tell us things such as, oh, this is too hard. You've never done this before, so why are you trying to do this now? You'll never be able to do it. You're not good enough. Someone else is going to get the opportunity. It's not going to come back to you. You're too young for this. You're too old for this. This is not your strength. Anything like that. All of those thoughts are the voices in our heads and the things that we say to ourselves, and they sort of run on a loop from time to time. And what we need to do is to raise our awareness to be able to hear that self-talk, because it also brings in a lot of assumptions, and it tells us that we assume certain things that aren't true simply based on that voice telling us, oh, we see someone who doesn't smile when they walk by. We assume that they're angry with us or that we did something wrong. And then there goes the voice again, just judging and judging and judging. And then another part of self-talk is also voices in our heads that sometimes is not our own voice. It's also not the other voice that we can observe, but it's actually the voice of other people that we've heard say things to us that are often judgmental and critical. So if you have grown up with a parent who always said negative things to you, sometimes that's the voice in your head that still plays. If you have a boss or someone else who is always sort of micromanaging or giving you very critical feedback, that's another voice that can be in your head. So sometimes the voice in our head is not always solely our own voice. It can also take the role of another person's voice that's in our head during times that we need to be focusing on the present moments and focusing on a task that we are trying to complete, or a person who is in front of us speaking. We're preoccupied with that. And then the big one that tends to be a big focus blocker are our own thoughts. So let me say this before I get into this further. Thoughts are good. Thoughts can be good. Without them, we would not have all the great ideas which manifest as things that we have in the world. Thoughts can be creative. Thoughts can be aspirational. What are we thinking about? We're thinking about our goals and our dreams and all of those. So thoughts can be very good, and we want to continue to have great thoughts. However, thoughts can also be quite troublesome, because thoughts can be irrational, meaning that they are not facts at all, yet they still exist. We can have ruminating thoughts, rather, meaning that we are, caught up in the past. We're worrying about things in the future, or what I call future casting. We're thinking about something that hasn't even happened yet and catastrophizing whatever might happen. Those are all troublesome thoughts, and those tend to be the types that also to block our ability to focus, because thoughts demand our attention. So in the last session, or the first session, I believe it was, I spoke about the constant vying for attention that goes on. There are many things that call for our attention at any given moment, and thoughts are one of the things that demand our attention. So it is up to us to regulate what we want to focus our attention on. Do we want to put our attention on our thoughts during the times that we recognize that we are having irrational thoughts, or that we're ruminating, or that we're worrying and future casting? And the answer is no. So how does mindfulness help with that? So the goal of mindfulness is not learning to not think. That is a myth. Many people think that, if I practice mindfulness, I'll be able to clear my mind. I'll be able to not think about anything. That's impossible. If you tried right now to not think for 2 minutes, even 1 minute, perhaps even 30 seconds, you cannot do it. You cannot make the mind not think. What we can do is to regulate what we focus our ability to think on. So the goal of mindfulness is about how do we deal with our thoughts in a deliberate and a healthy way. So how do we address thoughts for the most part? Well, on average, if we're having thoughts that we really don't want to have, we tend to suppress those thoughts. We just keep them down. We block them out. We put them in a box and try to just put them away in the closet. Say, I'm not going to think about this right now. The other way that we tend to address thoughts in a mindless fashion is by distracting ourselves. So a lot of the behaviors that we engage in are not really positive or healthy ways of addressing the thoughts and the things that we are thinking about. So we distract ourselves, we watch the TV, we, eat food, we just talk about whatever other things, all as an escape from actually addressing the thoughts that we have. But then what happens with those thoughts is that when we keep them down, they come back at some point. They tend to just reoccur and rebound. When we distract ourselves from really dealing with the thoughts at some point in time, they also are going to come back to our minds again. So the distraction is only temporary. It's only for a time. All of that behavior involves some form of struggle. This is going against our natural grain. It's not pleasurable for us to suppress our thoughts or to distract ourselves when we are thinking about things in a mindless way, because then it's also blocking our ability to focus on what we really need to be focusing on. So again, in a mindfulness practice, the way we address thoughts mindfully is by doing three things. We want to increase our ability to observe our thoughts, to actually see them. Just look at whatever we are thinking. As the thoughts come up, we take a detached approach and just observe our thoughts. When you do that, you can also train yourself to simply take your thoughts less seriously and to realize that thoughts are not facts. They are thoughts. So we can allow ourselves to have the thoughts, and we can also allow them to pass. So again, these are the things that we want to be able to do as we improve ourselves through our mindfulness practice, because these are ways of addressing thoughts that are no struggle. So as we practice these, we become more efficient in observing our thoughts, stopping and starting them, and being able to address them in a positive and healthy way. So when we can do that, we are developing our ability to focus our attention on what we choose to focus our attention on. We can direct our attention to one point that we choose to direct our attention to at any given time. The way we do that is by creating an anchor. So by this point in the series, I've already talked about the importance of the breath, and I'm going to return to that because now we're going to start using the breath as that anchor to direct our focus. So anytime that we need to be focused and we are focusing on a task, what we want to do to return our attention to that task is to create that anchor. And the easiest anchor to create is using the breath. So what you do is when you realize that you are sort of waning in your attention, you want to be able to return to that anchor to bring your attention back. So that is going to connect to the practices for this week. So we're going to build on the practices that we've been learning about. So for this week, you are going to practice observing your thoughts. As you realize and you see what you are thinking, you are going to take a step back and just allow the thoughts to come. Give them some attention, but don't really linger on them too much. Try to stay detached and just watch them. What are you thinking about? And then allow the thoughts to pass. Then you want to also practice anchoring your focus. So anytime you are engaged in the task, and that's part of your work for this week, is to single task. Remember, we talked about the myth of multitasking. You are going to attempt to do one thing for a specified amount of time. Whatever the time is that you set, you are going to direct your attention to accomplishing that one thing during the time that you have set. While you are doing that, you are going to notice when your mind starts to wander, because it will. You are going to then anchor your focus back to your breath. So you're going to notice your thoughts, whatever they may be. You're not going to assign any judgment to them. You're going to bring your awareness back to that anchor, back to your breath. Take a few in-breaths, a few exhales, and then you are going to just hold on to that anchor until you can bring your full attention back to your task. So that's the practice for this week, and you can support that practice with the meditations that are available for observing your thoughts, as well as focused attention for your breath. So I would love for you to join me next time as we wrap up this series on finding your focus by talking about the best things that we can do to really ramp up our ability to concentrate. So join me next time. Please drop a comment, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so. Please also visit my website, educatezen.org, to check out some of the good stuff that I have there too. And you can also drop me a line at any time, intentionaleducators@gmail.com. And I always read and respond to the email.